Let me say right away, and I hope you won't censor this, but I've never been a star fucker. Okay. I never chased after celebrities. I never hung out backstage to give them my card or show them an instrument I made. I got clear pretty early on that when it came to celebrity clients, I was no different than the guy they hired to fix their leaky sink in their apartment or their house. You know?
Hey, James here from eBassGuitar, and welcome to the second episode in this super special interview series celebrating 60,000 subscribers here on the eBassGuitar YouTube channel. In the first episode, we sat down with the legendary Leland Sklar, and today I'm thrilled to bring you another icon from the world of bass. This time it's Roger Sadowsky, who isn't just a world-class bass builder. As you'll find out, he doesn't call himself a luthier. He's someone whose instruments have shaped the sound of modern bass guitar. But in this conversation, we go deeper than design and build. We explore the man behind the basses and what truly drives him. What emerged was a personal, heartfelt look into Roger's values, his philosophy, and the relationships that had defined his journey. This is a rare glimpse into a master craftsman who believes that at its core, music and life is all about people. So let's dive into this powerful conversation with Roger Sadowsky. Roger, you're known as one of the finest bass builders and craftsmen alive, an innovator, a craftsman, and you're the cornerstone of countless players' iconic tones. But I'd love to dig a little bit deeper. When you're not building basses, who are you and what does life look like?
Okay. Well, who I am, I'm a husband, a father. I have a 33-year-old son. I've been married 42 years. I'm the cook at home. I do all the cooking. I like photography. I like vinyl. But my true avocation is making acoustic guitars, which was the passion that got me started in guitar making. And I started out in 1972 building acoustic guitars. When I started my shop in 79, there was just no market for handmade acoustics. So I started making electric guitars and then making electric basses. But acoustic guitars has always been a passion of mine. And it's carried over to my philosophy about building basses and electric guitars, and that I still think they're primarily acoustic instruments. And I can certainly elaborate on that a bit if you'd like me to.
Yeah, let's talk about it in just a second. I'd love to start understand what was the original motivator for you starting to build instruments?
Well, I was a hippie, folky finger picker at the time. I started playing guitar in 1969, doing like Gordon Lightfoot and Simon and Garfunkel stuff. And I was hanging out. I was actually in graduate school working on a PhD in psychobiology from 70 to 72.
Wow.
But I was miserable in graduate school, and I was really spending more time playing guitar than anything else. And I joined this folk society and got to know a lot of professional and semi-professional folk musicians. Most of them had vintage Martins or Gibsons, and I just got obsessed with the instrument. And I had this naive romantic fantasy that if I could learn to build guitars, I could get out of the rat race. I'd have my cabin in the woods and musicians would beat a path to my door. And so I ended up in New York City.
Would you say that dream has become a reality?
Yes, without a doubt. One of the things I realized when I was ready to start my own shop in early 79 was I had to be where the top players were. You can't be in the middle of the woods, and they're not going to beat a path to my door. So the choices were New York, LA, or Nashville. And I'm a born and raised New Yorker, so New York was where it was.
So fantastic. Let's talk about the connection then between acoustic guitar and the instruments that you're more widely recognized for now. How did that all come about?
Well, most of my clients at that time, the first couple years I had my shop, were all the session musicians in New York, the guitar players and the bass players. And I was doing a lot, besides normal repair work, I was doing a lot of modifications and upgrading, better hardware, shielding electronics, really good fret jobs and setups, blah, blah, blah. And of course, I started installing active tone circuits as well at that time. And so I would do the same amount of work to one bass or, several basses, and some were exceptional when I was done, and they weren't that much better than when I started. And I tried to figure out what was going on. And I concluded that the instrument that sounded the best amplified were the ones that sounded the best acoustically.
Wow.
And the ones that sounded the best acoustically were the ones that were lighter in weight. So that really became my approach from that point on of how I was building instruments. My early guitars all had chambered bodies. My early basses were lightweight body woods. And some years on, all of a sudden, the body wood I was purchasing was giving me heavier instruments than I wanted to make. And no wood suppliers at that time would sort wood by weight. They do
Oh,
now,
wow.
but they never did that. And so I came upon chambering as a way to reduce the weight and increase the acoustic resonance of the body. And so I've been chambering for at least 25 years now. I would even advise people back then, if they were going to buy a Fender, get the store to bring out 2 or 3 of the exact same model, the same woods, and the one that sounds the best acoustically is the one you should buy.
What absolutely fascinates me about that is it's very counterintuitive, because I've also heard a narrative from builders that the heavier the wood, the more tone it has. What's your response to that?
Well, I have maybe 5% of my clients who still want a solid body, not chambered. I still don't want to build anything over 9.5 pounds on an unchambered instrument. My target weight for my chambered instruments is 8.5 pounds or less.
Right.
Our target range on the Metro lines is 8.9 pounds or less. And I definitely get where there's more sustain, perhaps, but I don't think sustain is the end all and be all. I'm much more concerned with tone. And I think that the consensus from a lot of people is they like the tone of a Sadowsky bass.
Okay, that's talking of tone. You're making me jump a few questions ahead, but I'm going to ask it anyway. People often talk about the Sadowsky tone. In your words, what is the Sadowsky tone for bass guitars?
Well, again, in a nutshell, I think it's an instrument that's acoustically resonant, that has some character. But look, my secret sauce has been my preamp, and that's so much of my sound. And my circuit is so different than everything else on the market, virtually everything else. And I can't deny that's my special sauce. I mean, my fretwork is impeccable, our craftsmanship is impeccable, our wood selection is impeccable. But in terms of sound, I just have to give a lot of credit to the circuit that I use.
Fantastic. I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by people and their journeys. And I'm really fascinated how you went from building solid bodies or acoustic instruments and then became interested in electronics. That seems like quite a jump, 2 different disciplines. Okay. How did that happen?
Well, in between my acoustic period and starting my own shop, I spent 5 years running the repair department of a big music store in Philadelphia. So I was doing lots of work on electric instruments. And and I had an electronics mentor at that point. There was a company in San Francisco called Stars Guitars, three guys who used to be at Alembic and started a repair shop, hot rodding shop, selling brass bridges and brass nuts and preamps and all that stuff. And so the guy's name was Ron Armstrong, no relationship to Dan Armstrong. But he was my real mentor for electronics. I learned how to properly shield instruments. I learned about, I was very early into hum canceling issues and noise reduction issues. So he was a very important mentor to me on the electronics end. And when I did start my own business, his circuits were the first that I was using.
Right, fantastic. Now, I know you also make guitars as well at your shop. I'm really just curious, what is the percentage that you build of electric guitars versus bass guitars?
We're probably 85% basses and 15% electric guitars.
Wow, okay, so I am right in my perception then of thinking of you as mainly a bass guitar manufacturer.
Yeah, I never set out to be a bass maker.
Yep.
But my basses took off in the 80s. And one of my philosophies of life is you ride the horse in the direction the horse is going. And the direction the horse was going was basses. So that's how I wound up where I am now.
So can you give us an insight into what were the 80s like as your bass guitar world started taking off? What happened?
Well, it was a wonderful, exciting decade or more for me because I was still doing repair work. I was trying to manage about 50% repair work, 50% building. So I was not only working for all the New York session guys, but all the performing artists who were coming through New York. I had, most of my relationships through them was with their guitar techs. And they all knew that any of the people they were teching for needed anything, I was the guy. So I got to work with an incredible roster of artists, and I got to work on an incredible number of fabulous instruments. And I really, really believe that so much of what I've learned over the years has been by addressing the needs of these musicians. They would come to me and say, I got this problem, or I don't like this, or I want that. So having to address all their various needs was what enabled me to raise the bar. I have to give credit to Leo. I mean, Leo Fender got an awful lot right the first time around. And all I did was take his platform and bring it up to another level. And that's really what it is.
Who were some of the early players in the 80s that made a mark on you?
For me, it was the session guys like Will Lee and Neil Jason and Marcus Miller and Francisco Centeno and just a slew of guys. And the one thing that I think you'd find of interest is, again, I started my shop in '79.
Yep.
If you got the union directory for the New York City Musicians Union, they had two chapters for bass. They had acoustic bass and Fender bass. And nobody was walking into a recording studio in New York at that time with anything but a jazz bass or a P bass. And a lot of the session work were jingles. They were short, 45-minute sessions. Some of these guys would do 4 sessions a day. And an engineer was not going to spend 10 minutes dialing in a bass he'd never recorded before. So there was this genuine pressure on me and my clients that the bass had to essentially look like a Fender. And but it had to sound better than any Fender that engineer had ever recorded before. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was really the situation that I was working in then. But as you say, it was an incredibly exciting time to be involved in the music biz, as we say, in showbiz.
Yeah.
I mean, besides the session guys, the touring musicians who came through my shop, it was, again, I dealt mostly with their roadies. Let me say right away, and I hope you won't censor this, but I've never been a star fucker. Okay. I never chased after celebrities. I never hung out backstage to give them my card or show them an instrument I made. I got clear pretty early on that when it came to celebrity clients, I was no different than the guy they hired to fix their leaky sink in their apartment or their house. You know? And that was a really important reality to acknowledge, okay, who I was. And
Yeah.
I'm not looking to these people to be my friends, you know, they're my customers. And that's the way I've operated, and I treat everybody the same. I don't care if you're even a non-professional. I treat everybody with the same courtesy and respect.
One of the things I've always found fascinating about your world is that you don't offer artist deals or endorsements. Everybody pays the same money. So
Right.
if you see a musician playing a Sadowsky instrument, they've paid whatever price the shop
Yeah, I mean,
charged.
let's be totally honest here. Jason Newsted owns 30 Sadowsky basses.
Wow.
Jason Newsted owns 30 Sadowsky basses, and he paid full price for 27 of them. I gave him a bass after I made him 7 basses, and so we had a motto in the shop for a while: buy 7, get 1 free. And so the only other people I've given an instrument to are my signature artists, Will Lee and Verdine White,
Fair enough.
being totally honest and transparent.
Well, I love that as a mantra for how you work, because the reality of the situation is I've used your basses probably on 500 or 600 videos, and 75% of everything I've recorded is probably on that red one over there.
Wow,
in the
I'm
corner.
honored. Thank you.
But I use that bass because it feels like home. It works.
It worked.
And I'm at the point with this where basses can come my direction. But this will always stay up there because it is authentically me, and I bought it at full price from a shop, and that is the relationship I have with the instrument. And I absolutely love that you keep that philosophy going. And the other part of what I love about your philosophy is the customer service you give, because you do look after your players. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I appreciate your comments very much. I had an epiphany in 1982 that as much as I love building guitars, and I love the process, the woodworking, everything about it, when I'm done, that guitar can't love me back. And I realized that all the satisfaction for me in my work was dealing with the person who was going to be playing that instrument.
Wow.
And it totally transformed me. I mean, it was really a transformational epiphany for me. And it all became about people. And I serve people by the work that I do, either whether it's repair work or building my instrument. That's the way I contribute to other people's lives. And I've lived my life like that for over, 40 years now. And I still do that every day.
I love it when I find out about the people behind the great work in the world. That's the most fascinating thing for me, and it's amazing to hear you say the same thing, that you're not really dealing in basses, you're dealing in people.
Absolutely, without a doubt. The emails I get almost daily about how much, someone has my bass, 10 years, or my guitar, how much it means to them, how much they love it. I mean, or how well I take care of people at a customer service level. That's the fulfillment for me. It's really not about, I never wanted, after I had this so-called epiphany, I never wanted to get big enough where I wasn't dealing primarily direct with my customers. And I never wanted to have a factory. I never wanted to expand. The biggest I ever got was 12 people.
Right.
That was in the late, before the pandemic.
Sure.
And I was selling to dealers at that point, primarily my Metro line, which
Yep.
at that point was made in Japan. And that'll tie into when we talk about my relationship with Warwick and
Yep.
why I'm working with them now.
I'm excited to talk about that in just a moment.
Sure.
But I'd love to ask you, can you describe a moment? What was a moment where a particular player's feedback drove your innovation? You learned something new, you discovered something new.
Well, let's go back to the very first active tone circuit I installed. So Stars Guitars had a circuit that had a treble and bass boost. And so I'm talking 1979 here, late 79. And I had a client, his name was Tony Kniff. He's a songwriter, bass player, still gigs regularly in Manhattan with his band. And he came to me complaining that he felt he was having trouble cutting through live.
Right.
And I said to him, look, I've just started to work with this active tone circuit. If you're game, I'd love to install it in your bass and get your feedback. So I did. And he came back just raving about, wow, he can't believe how well he's sitting in the mix. And it was transformational, he said.
Really?
So literally the second guy after Tony happened to be Marcus Miller. And Marcus was, I think, 18 or about that age. And he came in with his 1977 jazz bass. He had just started to get some session work. And he just said, one of my dear friends, a session guitarist, introduced him to me. And Marcus just said to me, make this the best bass you can possibly make it. So, of course, I re-trued the fingerboard, I refretted it, I made a new nut, installed a badass bridge, shielded the electronics, and installed the circuit. And Marcus credited me with giving him the Marcus Miller sound. And that's when I knew I was going in the right direction. And so I started retrofitting a fair amount of the session guys' basses with preamps. That Stars went out of business a couple years later,
Right.
and then they encouraged me to go with a Bartolini circuit, which was similar to theirs.
Okay.
And I used that until 1990. And then I felt Bartolini couldn't supply me regularly enough, and I wanted to do an outboard preamp as well. So there was a guy down the hall from me doing amp repair, and his name happened to be Alex Aguilar. And Alex and I became good friends. And Alex redesigned the circuit for me, and I've been using the same circuit since 1990.
Wow, I didn't know that. So there is a connection between the current Sadowsky circuit and Aguilar.
And Alex Aguilar,
Alex
not the Aguilar company.
Okay,
Yeah.
just for total clarity, what's the difference between?
Well, Alex was just solo then. He wasn't making bass amps. He was repairing amps in general. And but he was designing electronics and custom building some amps on a very small scale. And we became buddies.
Fantastic. Well, let's start moving forward a couple of decades. And I'll be transparent. Here, both of these basses that I have sat right there are your Japanese line, and I love them both dearly. How did the connection with Sadowsky Japan come along? What was behind that? What were the drivers for
Okay.
doing that? And can you tell us more about it?
Yeah. So I got approached by a Japanese distributor in 1987. They were originally looking to buy my hot rodded Fender jazz basses from me, and then that quickly led into me making Sadowsky basses for them.
Right.
And I became very, very popular in Japan. Again, I can't deny the connection to Marcus. Marcus was like a rock star in Japan at
Yep.
that time, and so was Will, and so were a lot of other guys. And so they had they got approached by a guy in Japan. His name was Yoshi Kikuchi, and he started the Atelier Z
Right.
bass brand.
Okay.
And he was very inspired by my instruments and approached my distributor and said he'd really like to work with me. So he came over from Japan and literally spent 10 months working in my shop. He left his wife and two young kids, 10 months working with me, and went back to Japan as my authorized technician, so to speak. And then after a couple of years, we talked about making a more affordable Sadowsky bass in Japan under his supervision.
Right.
And in 2003, we launched the Metro line.
What was the biggest
And
thing you learnt from that process?
the first thing I learned from that process, just how essential it is to have somebody supervising quality at every step of the game.
Right.
And so Yoshi, if I didn't have Yoshi supervising, I never would have done a production instrument. And yeah, I learned that real quickly, that that's the key. You've got to have boots on the ground and somebody and it turns out he ended up being more anal compulsive and OCD than I am.
Wow.
And so there were a lot of questions about what's good enough.
Right. So, what was the biggest challenge working with Yoshi? Have I pronounced that correctly?
Yeah, Yoshi.
And the distance of Japan, and the geography relating to that.
Well, it was not a problem. I mean, his English got progressively better as we were working together. We didn't need a translator. I think he actually studied English just for that purpose. And I mean, we didn't, in that day, I mean, we were talking fax machine.
Yeah.
Fax communications, okay? I mean, I still remember I got my first fax machine in 1989, and it was like $1,100. But I immediately became an international business having that fax machine, which literally would have been impossible prior to that. I mean, before that were telexes, and before that were telegrams. And I'm old enough to remember the time that if you wanted to travel to Europe, you had to write the hotel to make a reservation. So I go back that far.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So, but we had very good communication, and then as email came into the picture, there were a lot of emailing, a lot of photographs. Is this okay? Is that okay? That kind of stuff. What's your spec for this? What's your spec for that? And it was just a matter of constant communication.
So, were the Japanese bases shipped to you in New York, and then you finished them, or how did that process work?
Well, I didn't have to do that because of his quality control. So at that point, we were primarily selling the Metro Expresses to dealers, and my Japan distributor had an associate in the States, And in the beginning, they were handling all the dealer sales. And then at some point, I took that over and I started handling it myself. And again, um, I think it was important for me to be the representative of the brand with the buyers and the owners of these bass shops and these music stores.
Were there any challenges for you handing over the reins or starting to hand over the reins of the Sadowsky name to anybody else?
You talking about in my shop or in terms of the transition
The,
from Japan to Germany?
I'm talking about the transition, yeah, from your shop to Japan. Were there challenges? Did you find any personal challenges letting go of the reins, or?
Well, it was exciting for me, and again, it was it it only worked because of my relationship with Yoshi and my distributor, who were so loved my work so much, loved my instruments so much, and I knew I had someone I could trust to put out an instrument that I didn't have to worry about it.
Fantastic. So I've used those Japanese basses. I love them, but not so long back, in the last 5 to 7 years, you built a relationship with what we call in the UK Warwick.
Right?
In America, you call it Warwick.
Yeah.
Um, uh, how how did that relationship come about?
Well, I I began to feel in the around 2017, 2018 that, and I had turned 70, so that would have been, yeah, just around 2019, that I want to be at my workbench making instruments. I don't want to be on the phone selling guitars to dealers
Right.
or on the computer selling guitars to dealers. So I so as part of that conversation with myself, I felt I needed two things to move on from Japan. I needed first a great factory. I've seen a lot of factories in my day in China and Japan and the US. I've seen nice factories. I've seen pretty crude factories. And so a great factory was number one. And number two, they had to have worldwide distribution. That at this point, I want to be at my bench making instruments, dealing one-on-one with my clients. And and that's what I needed. So I spent a year or two exploring possible partners. Um, my intellectual property attorney, who does a lot of stuff in the music business, was talking to various people to see if anyone was interested. And I recall, Warwick was doing these bass camps back in those days, and I knew several people who had gone to them and would just rave about his factory and how
Yep.
amazing it was. And he actually bought Hans-Peter Wilfer, who owns Warwick, in the prior years, actually bought 6 basses from me for these bass camps because when he was in the room where he was demoing his amps, he didn't want there only to be Warwick basses.
Oh, wow.
So he was connected enough to realize that the quality of my instruments and bought several for that purpose. And I woke up one morning, early January 2019, and I said to myself, Warwick is it. Hans-Peter Wilfer is the guy. There's nobody else. And I sent him an email and I said, I've been manufacturing in Japan since 2003. 2003.
Yep.
I'm looking for a new person to partner with as a licensing deal. And would you be interested in working with me? And about 3 hours later, I get an email from him that, Roger, I'm so excited. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. And we met 2 weeks later at NAMM. And then by that August, we had a signed agreement and we started production in January of 2020.
Wow. Now, I found out the tiniest connection to Warwick that I didn't realize I had. My dad is a double bass player, and he had a Wilfer bass made in Germany. And Wilfer was a brand of double basses.
Right.
And the connection between the Wilfer double bass and the Wilfer family, I only, Ben, the high-tech distributor, who is the British Sadowsky distributor, he was the one which made the penny drop that of the pedigree and the legacy of the instruments at Warwick and how far back it goes.
Hans Peter, I refer to as HP. His dad was selling instruments to like American soldiers after the war, and started a factory called Framus. And HP is actually, it's not open to the public, but he created a museum hoping it would be a bit of a tourist attraction. Keep in mind, they're in Martinkirchen, Germany, which is the home of traditional musical instrument making for all of Europe, along with Mittenwald for stringed instruments like violins. And so they were really early making upright acoustic electric basses. They were just doing amazing things. I think at one point they were making like 400 instruments a month.
Wow.
And the whole gamut from ukuleles to archtop jazz guitars to electric guitars to electric basses and upright basses. It was amazing. But the Japanese in the 70s bankrupted him. And he went out of business. And so in '86, HP started a new company called Warwick. Framus Warwick actually is the technical name of the company, and then started the Warwick bass line and continued with a new generation of Framus guitars.
Cool. So what I'm especially interested in is, since you've opened up your relationship with Warwick, is pre-Warwick, there were two lines. There was your New York shop and then the more quote-unquote affordable one. And the affordable bass was around about $2,000 roughly, Mark. Correct in that, Hunter?
Well, the Metro lines were like 25 and up. Maybe some of them were in the low 3,000s, some of the models. But then in 2017, I started the Metro Express, which was a full-on factory guitar, same factory that Fender was using. Oh. And that one was at the 2,000 price point. So I had the Metro line and the Metro Express.
Oh, right. So you started the Metro Express pre-Warwick?
Yes.
Yeah. I did not appreciate that. How fascinating. So I think I'm thinking 2,000 actually pounds. That's roughly the same conversion, I believe. So, but now you have roughly what I think.
That's right. You're talking 2,000 pounds.
Correct. Yeah, that's the price point in my head. So yeah, there we go. So, but now, since you've built this relationship with Warwick, you have now entered the £1,000 or $1,000 roughly base market with the Sadowsky brand. And I was fortunate enough to review one of these a couple of weeks back, so I've had personal experience of the instrument. I'm very interested in what motivated you to start building an instrument in that price bracket. How did that happen?
Well, again, it's about people. I'm not a snob. Not everybody can afford $6,000 for one of my custom instruments, or even, I guess for you would be 2,500 pounds for a Metro line.
Yep.
And in US dollars, the Metro lines are between 3,600 and 4,500. And then he's got above that, the master build, which have special woods, limited editions, and then he has his own custom shop that can even exceed anything that comes out of my shop. So he has all of these capabilities in Germany, and then he's been working in China for a long time. He maintains an office in Shanghai. And so again, I'm not a snob about it. My goal was for the Metro Express that this would be the best bass on the market for $1,000.
Brilliant.
That was my goal. And I think it was a rough 4 years getting started during the pandemic.
Yep.
But I think we're in a really, really good place right now with the Metro Express. And I'm just thrilled with the quality of the instrument.
So I find the Metro Express, particularly the upgraded version or the newer version that you just brought out, so exciting. And a lot of our audience here at eBassGuitar are bedroom players, weekend warriors, hobbyists. And the wonderful thing is it's opened up the Sadowsky instruments into their world. So I'd love to ask you, what do you think a hobbyist player should be looking for in a bass guitar?
Well, first thing is to determine what their budget is. I mean, you can get a bass guitar for $400. You can get a bass for $800, $1,200. You know, it keeps going up from there. So budget is the first consideration. There's some truth to the expression, you get what you pay for.
Yep.
I don't see how I could make a quality bass that I would be happy to have my name on for much less than that $1,000 price point that we're at now. But I think given the market in general, that's about as affordable as a quality instrument's going to be. And I'm happy with where we are.
What features on the Metro Express, as it is right now, excite you?
Well, again, to build in that price point, I went with okume as the body wood, which is an African mahogany type wood. It's not a real mahogany, but it looks similar to mahogany. And it's generally quite lightweight. So the instruments are not chambered. They may be a half-pound heavier than a German Metro line, but at the same time, some of them are just as light as a chambered Metro line. So it's a great tone wood. I've been using it for a very long time. So that's number one. Again, an acoustically resonant, lightweight body wood. And then the thing that's really exciting, I think, for that price point is we're able to do roasted maple necks.
Oh, yeah.
Now, or as some people know them as torrefied. And so that brings a level of stability to the neck that, you know, you have to think, you know, Chinese factory, some of them may not be as well climate controlled. I'm not speaking for the one we use, but generally speaking, wood comes in, becomes an instrument, wood goes out, you know, and a bass goes out. One of the things that always amazed me with the German factory is the amazing wood inventory they have being air dried in an open air, huge shed, in addition to kiln drying. I mean, they've got wood in there with tags on it saying it's 20, 25 years old. Yeah. And I'm talking pallets of wood, not pieces of wood. So, so to have a roasted maple neck on a instrument in the Metro Express price point for stability, for not having to worry about it shrinking in the winter and the fret end sticking out the first winter that you go through, the resistance to warping or frequent truss rod adjustments. I think that's a fantastic thing, and it's one I genuinely am excited about.
I find it really fascinating hearing you talking about the Warwick wood supply, because behind me, that's a Pullman double bass, which is from, I believe, a similar area as the Luthier instruments in that part of the world. And one thing I know about the wood for that is it was buried during the war, so the Nazis didn't get to it.
Wow.
Yeah, are there any stories like that from the Warwick factory?
Well, that's something you'd have to talk to them about. I'm not aware of anything like that,
Yeah,
but that was one of the things that I fell in love with was their wood inventory.
yeah.
And I'm a junkie when it comes to wood. I mean, so instead of buying heroin, I'm buying wood. but and I'm really having to force myself now to slow down a little bit on my wood buying. But yeah, I just love it. I just love it.
Fantastic. So one of the questions I've got about the new Metro Express is that you changed the circuit a little bit from the traditional Sadowsky circuit.
All we did was go back to my original Sadowsky circuit, which was a
Right.
volume, blend, treble boost, bass boost. And I didn't start offering what I call the VTC, which is for me, it's an abbreviation for vintage tone control. I didn't start offering that until about 25 years ago. So I've got like 20 years worth of basses that only had
Right.
volume, treble, and bass. And again, realistically, I mean, I can't have every feature in $1,000 bass that you get in a $3,500 bass. So that's one of the things we omitted on the Metro line was the VTC. And but we offer an upgrade drop-in preamp system so that for a reasonable price, you can upgrade the Metro Express and get it a lot closer to a Metro line at a much lower cost.
Amazing. Amazing. So let's start wrapping up. And you're 40 years plus into your bass building instrument Luthering career.
45 plus, yeah.
45 plus. What legacy do you want to leave? What does that look like? Is it important to you, legacy?
It it's well, there's going to be no family continuation with my business. My son is not, he worked for me for 2 years after college. He wanted to work for me. And the truth is, after 2 years, I fired him because it wasn't his passion. And, I, when I hire people, that's number one. You have to be passionate about wanting to do this work.
Yeah.
And so he didn't have the passion. And it was good for me to boot him out of the nest and took him a while to find his place in the world, but he's in a very good place right now. So there's not going to be a family legacy.
Right.
My shop manager, Lucas, if at any point I step away, he'd be in a position to continue my New York custom shop. But the truth is, the future of my legacy will be through Warwick and everything we're doing with them.
Fantastic. Well, it seems to me like that is the perfect way to keep a 45-year career going for the next 45 years.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. What would you say to a luthier? And I think I might know the answer from what you've just said. Someone who wants to build basses. What's the most important thing for someone just starting out?
Okay. Well, the first important thing is to stop using the word luthier and refer to yourself as a bass maker or a guitar maker. I find luthier incredibly pretentious.
Okay.
And I see kids coming out of a guitar school and touting themselves as a master luthier. And it's a total turnoff for me. So I'm a guitar maker, and a bass is a guitar, and so that falls under the umbrella. So I'm a guitar maker, plain and simple.
Brilliant.
My advice to them is to approach it as an avocation. It's incredibly difficult to make a living. And so unless you've got a trust fund or a sugar daddy or any of that kind of stuff, you need to, it's a great choice for an avocation, and it's an incredibly difficult way to make a living. I got in at the right time. You know, there are a bunch of guys my age who have been doing it as long as we did. And we got in because, you know, the 70s were the dog years of instrument manufacturing from all the companies, Fender, Martin, Gibson. We got started trying to fix up those instruments, let
Right.
alone, you know, and but today, you know, the state of instrument manufacturing is in a much higher place. What you can get today for $500, you couldn't dream of in the 70s.
Sure.
So but yeah, my advice is always do this as your avocation, get a good day job that pays the bills and gives you health insurance and whatever else you need, but and do it just because you love to do it. And if you're able to sell them, great. But yeah, that's my advice.
What's the biggest misconception players have about boutique instruments?
Well, I think for those of us who build in a Fender style, I've always, you know, had to deal with, well, it's just a Fender, expensive Fender copy, or that I was a screwdriver shop just putting pre-made parts together.
Sure.
And so I've had to battle that stuff for a lot of, and it's one of the reasons I've stayed off most of these internet
Interesting.
talk groups, because it's filled with people who are toxic in that way.
Yeah.
So the quality we put in, starting with our wood choices and our construction methods and our electronics, and we spend more time cutting a nut and doing the final setup than some of these big factories do to make an entire instrument. Okay, so there's just, you know, the other thing I need to say about factories, and it relates to Warwick, is no matter how many CNCs they have, or robots, or this or that, the handwork is still the handwork.
Yep.
There's no getting away from that. And so even in a great factory like Warwick, the guys doing the handwork, they're amazing. And I love going to the factory twice a year and working one-on-one with them. And they're exceptional with what they do. So I think that's yeah, there's just no getting around how much handwork goes into making a quality instrument.
So I'd love to ask you, who else do you admire in the world of instrument making today?
Well, you know, I consider myself friends and colleagues with 95% of the other bass makers out there.
Great.
We have a friendly, it's the entire guitar industry, to be honest with you, that we've always been open and sharing with sources, with methods, with machinery. I can pick up the phone and call any number of colleagues and ask them, you know, where do you get this, or how do you do that? And it's been a wonderful community in that regard. There are a few outliers who claim to
Sure.
have trade secrets. There are no trade secrets, I'm sorry. But for the most part, we're just a friendly group. I've been close friends with Mike Tobias for many years. I have a lot of respect for Sheldon Dingwall.
Yep.
You know, there's Carrie Nordstrand. I mean, we're just all friends. And the truth is, there's plenty of business for all of us out there.
Brilliant.
And there's no need we have to feel competitive with each other.
And I love that response, because that is exactly how I feel about the other online bass educators which are out there. We all have great relationships and are open and giving, and the wider online education world. So it's great to hear that philosophy running throughout the instrument making world as well.
Well, I think without that philosophy, you're looking to have a lot of negative energy in your life.
Brilliant. I love that. So let's move on to the final question. If this was the last thing people heard from you in this interview, what would you want them to know, remember, or carry with them about you and your work?
Well, I think it's what we discussed earlier on. The most important thing to me is my relationships with my clients, you know, it's not about dollars. I mean, obviously, you know, you need to make a living, but I've never chased the dollar, and I've never. Yeah, it's just that those emails that I get, like I mentioned earlier, the phone calls, it's just all about the people in my world that I touch through my work. And that's really, honestly, that's where it is.
That's an amazing way to finish. Is there anything else you want to add or say to this interview?
No, I first of all, thank you for spending some time with me. I really appreciate that, and I respect what you've created in your universe.
Thank you.
You know, yeah, I mean, like when I started with Warwick, I had all this chatter from people, oh, you sold out and all that kind of stuff. I didn't sell anything. This is a licensing arrangement. I'm totally accessible to everybody by phone or email. Dealing with my customers is the satisfying part for me, and making a difference by making a difference in their world, they make a difference in my world.
That's an amazing way to finish. By making a difference in their world, they make a difference in my world.
Yeah.
Roger
I'm
Sadowsky.
sincere about that.
Roger Sadowsky, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, James. Good to see you. Take care.
Wow, that was such a meaningful conversation. So different from how I expected to be, but a beautiful reminder that great craftsmanship, great basses is all about great relationships with people. Roger's humility, generosity, and deep care for the people he works with really shone through to me. And it's no wonder to me his basses are held in such high regard. If you missed the first episode of this interview series with Leland Sklar, be sure to check that out. It's full of great insights, stories, and a ton of wisdom. So I want to say thank you again for being part of this journey. If this video has resonated with you, make sure you hit that like button, also that subscribe button too, and share it with someone who loves music as much as we do. I'll see you in the next interview.